Preseason week 3 is a wrap, guys. The Giants have just defeated the Bengals. We are now 3-0 in preseason. Whoop-de-doo. We have a lot to talk about. I have about 6 pages of notes here. Not really sure if I should call them the Bengals. I came up with a new name that I actually put on Twitter. Cincinnati Bengals or the Land of Misfit Giants. Because I swear to you, I was able to point out at least 4 or 5 former Giant players on the Bengals roster. We have a lot to go over today, some good, some bad, some dreadful. We're going to split this video up into 2 parts. I'm going to start off with the defense, hop on over to the offense, and we'll wrap this thing up. This is your full recap and review for preseason week 3, Giants, Bengals. I hope you enjoy it. Leave a like if you did, sub to the channel if you haven't already. Let's get into the video. You know, right out of the gate, I want to talk about something that excites me, that gets me happy. The thing I wanted to talk about since the beginning of the game, and that is Corey Ballentine. I tweeted this, pretty much self-explanatory. From what we've seen from Corey Ballentine so far, he's going to be a Pro Bowler. The kid is a natural. A 6th round pick out of a tiny little school. He looks incredible. I'm telling you right now, he's going to be a starter by year's end. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to happen. That's kind of up for debate at this point. I could see a situation where midway through, right before the trade deadline, much like people thought we were going to do last year, this year we'll actually trade Jornis Jenkins, get some capital for him, and I could completely see our 2 starting cornerbacks, one a 1st round draft pick and the other a 6th round draft pick. Of course, I'm talking about DeAndre Baker and Corey Ballentine. I see it so vividly. I can't speak highly enough of this kid. He's such a hard worker. Not only against the pass was he effective, where he looks to be a shutdown capable corner, but he had 7 total tackles, 1 for a loss. Couldn't ask for a better game out of him. He just looks like a pro. If anything, he's benefited from the injury situation that the Giants have had to the secondary. He might not even have gotten any sort of reps with the first team, if not for those injuries. He is completely taking advantage of this opportunity and proving that he doesn't have to fight for a roster spot at this point. He's going to be a bona fide starter. It's just a matter of time. But unfortunately, that's pretty much the only positive thing I'm going to say about our secondary for the rest of this video. Tonight, our secondary, excluding Ballentine, of course, could not have looked worse. Looked absolutely horrendous. First drive on defense of the game, all starters in on defense, all starters in on offense. And that drive ends with Peppers getting absolutely destroyed by a 6'6", 260-pound tight end. And I'm not talking blown up or, no. CJ Uzomah had 2 steps on Peppers in for the touchdown from Andy Dalton. In past videos, I've talked about how sometimes the box score might not tell the whole story of the game. In this game, the box score, it showed it all. It was a clear mapping out of what this game was like. Dalton threw for 104 with a touchdown. Finley came in and tossed 155. And then Jake Dolgala, shout out to Central Connecticut State University, just a few miles down the road from me here in Connecticut, came in and he threw 94 and added on a touchdown. Combined, Cincinnati threw 31 for 42 for 325 yards and 3 touchdowns. A 122 passer rating. Good God. In last week's review video that I posted about Giants versus Bears, I mentioned that if there were an NFL caliber starter in the ball game, that box score would have looked much different than it actually did. And I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. In that game, it was Tyler Bray and Chase Daniels throwing those passes. In this game, I hate to say it, but an average starting quarterback in Andy Dalton was able to abuse our secondary. Ryan Finley, the 104th pick, came in and tore us apart. And then an undrafted free agent from a tiny state school here in Connecticut came in and was tossing dimes too. I wish I could say that it was our younger backups that were getting abused, and don't get me wrong, it definitely was. But starters as well. I mean, Jenkins, even after committing a defensive pass interference penalty, allows a gigantic catch to Damian Willis along the sideline. I've already mentioned how poor Peppers played. Sticking with the topic of Julius Peppers, for all of you out there that thought it was going to be a easy, seamless transition between Landon Collins and Peppers, you must feel awfully dumb. Yes, they are very similar players, and Landon Collins does have his flaws in terms of coverage. Most Alabama players do. But my God, it's night and day. That's all I really have to say about the secondary. Want to move past that, keep my mood up. Moving on to the backers and D line, overall very impressive. I'm talking Dexter Lawrence. I'm telling you right now, this kid is going to be a problem for offensive lines. Numerous times tonight, he's splitting double teams. If he is one-on-one, he's shedding. This kid is going to be a problem. He's bringing pressure into quarterbacks' faces, something that we haven't had consistently from a D tackle in a long time. And he is a big-time run stopper. And that goes for most of our defensive line tonight. As bad as our secondary was, our run support was that much better. As a team, the Bengals totaled 29 rushing yards on 16 carries. Do the math. That's 1.8 yards per carry. Keep that up, please. We totaled 5 sacks, compiled total of 6 tackles for loss, which of course 5 of those were from the sacks. As impressive as the backers in line were, a few guys did not do themselves any favors tonight. Whether you want to believe it or not, as a group, we have a paper-thin interior linebacking group. Not helping out at all was the dreadful performance by Tay Davis. He's a young kid. He's been running with first team all week during practice, and he just did not show up in this ball game. He had a legitimate chance in tonight's game to throw Alec Ogletree out of the starting rotation, especially since he's missed time with that injury. Connolly is always flying everywhere. He looked decent. He looked a lot better than Tay Davis did. Davis was just exposed by the Bengals. And as much as I'm not his biggest fan, we do need Alec Ogletree back. He is clearly an upgrade to what we currently have on the field. And I gotta admit, I do like the sound of Ogletree and Connolly as our interior starting group starting out on week 1. That does seem like that will fit well. A young guy, a veteran, meshing together well. I think that's going to be good. It's just our linebackers. We are paper thin, and we definitely need to build up that part of our defense. We have the young secondary. Played poorly, but it's a group that we're going to develop. Our defensive line, I wouldn't be surprised if they place in, I wouldn't want to say top 5, I'd say maybe top 15, upper echelon, upper half of the league come year's end. It's a very impressive group. It's these linebackers right now that are going to need an upgrade. So the last note I have on the defense is X-Man, O'Shane Ximines. Early on, he is looking like a top-level pass rusher in the making. He had 2 sacks tonight, one of which was with the entire starting offensive line from the Bengals. I love it. It's very, very early to tell, but it does look like that for all the grief that we give our front office, it looks like they nailed this draft on the defensive side of the ball for sure. That's really all I got for you on the defensive side of the ball. We're going to move right along to offense. And honestly, it's just more of the same. The usual suspects, but we do have a few new names to talk about. But as always, the future Hall of Famer, Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones look very impressive. In my top 5 things to watch for in this game, that video I posted yesterday prior to the start of this game, Jones was once again number 1. And he's going to be number 1 in the next video, most likely. I wanted to see if he could do it again. Do it for a third straight time, especially with all the distractions going around this week, the news coming out about Baker Mayfield, and then Baker reaches out to apologize. And with all that going on in his head, would he be able to come out and perform? I'd say 9 for 11 for 141 yards is a pretty good stat line, the usual. The biggest takeaway again in this game, Daniel Jones is mentally and physically strong. He's a tough dude. Tweeted it. First, Jones drops a dime to Britton Goldman, which was just yet again another example of his arm strength, which was a knock on him come around when the draft came around, that he couldn't throw the ball downfield. He's displaying that arm strength. But beyond that, his ability to put the ball up high, put it in a spot where only his receiver is going to be able to catch that ball. This was a great example. Then, out of nowhere, Daniel Jones nearly gets his block knocked off with a huge sack fumble by Carl Lawson. Back-to-back weeks now that Jones has taken a hit. But back-to-back weeks where Jones gets up, dusts himself off, doesn't let it affect him. The kid was built for the big stage. You'll say small school, he went to Duke. Duke's known for basketball. No, this kid was built for the big stage. Daniel Jones, after taking that huge hit, in typical fashion, honestly, comes back with an amazing pass to debuting rookie Darius Slayton, and he nearly scored on that pass from Daniel Jones. I mean, what else can I really say about Daniel Jones at this point? You know, he's put the work in on the field. As far as the other QBs go, I mean, Eli, once again, just the lone drive, didn't look overly impressive. And I mean, like I've said in past videos, Eli's not really in these preseason games. He's more so just getting his throwing shoulder ready. I wouldn't take too much stock in anything he does on the field at this point. He's been in the league so long, he's going to be ready for week 1. Although it's got to be at least on the back of the coach's mind that Daniel Jones is around the corner. I mean, it's so clear to see. Even I read quickly before this video, before I started recording, Coach Shermer's post-game press conference, he mentions, someone asks, hey, Daniel's looking great, what's going on here? And he just repeated the same thing we've been hearing since he was drafted. When it's Daniel's time, it's Daniel's time. One interesting bit that he did mention, he said it's a long time until week 1. Do that what you will. But he did mention it's a long time till week 1. A lot of things can happen. So, hey, who knows? I wouldn't put my life savings on it, but maybe we see Daniel Jones week 1. I don't know. In terms of the other quarterbacks, not much to talk about. Loletta looked okay. Tanny looked dreadful, kind of. Another thing that I put in my top 5 things to watch in this ball game at number 3 was who's going to be number 3. You know, who's going to be that third string quarterback? No one really stepped up to the plate and assumed that role tonight. Like I said, the Giants are most likely not going to be carrying 4 quarterbacks on their roster, and I was fully expecting one of these guys to seize the moment here and clearly display why it should be them. Unfortunately, neither of them did, and That's a shame. Now we're going to move on to those hog males. That offensive lineman. It's so refreshing for a Giants fan to say that the offensive line is not the problem. It feels good to say that. I got worried early on. Will Hernandez, draft pick from last year out of UTEP, had 2 quick penalties. Were able to clean that up. But throughout the game, speaking of clean, the pocket, all the quarterbacks had time. I know Jones took the sack from Lawson. Lawson's looking great. I'm not going to get into Bengals things, but that was the lone sack in the ball game for the Bengals. Clean pocket, great running lanes. Our offensive line is looking good, developing nicely. The starting 5 mainly are looking very, very good together. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how this transfers into the regular season, because the starting 5 has pretty much been slated since the beginning, but definitely looking good along that offensive line. I gotta say, talking wide receivers and the Giants prior to this whole Odell Beckham trade and all of this garbage before preseason, I didn't think I'd be having this much fun. But I gotta tell you, every week someone from this wideout group makes the race more and more difficult for coaches. This week, Britton Golden, as I mentioned earlier, he caught a gorgeous pass from Daniel Jones up high. That was his highlight on offense. But beyond that, he might have secured a roster spot tonight on special teams. Looked good on kick return, but his highlight of the night overall was a huge 68-yard punt return for a touchdown. If you're watching my Madden 20 New York Giants franchise, you've noticed Ballantyne is my return man. He's fumbled a couple times, and as much as I love him in real life, I don't love when he fumbles, so I might have to pick up Britton Golden. And if you haven't checked out my franchise, I'll leave that playlist in the link in the description and up in the annotation. Definitely check that out. I'd appreciate it. But yeah, no, he looked great, and quite honestly, he could have secured a roster spot with that performance tonight. Special teams goes a long way in a coach's mind, just because it's beyond what you're used to. You know, you come up in the system as a wide receiver. If you make it to the NFL, you were probably the star on your college team, and now you have to demote yourself to special teams. No, coaches love when a guy assumes that role and does it to the best of their ability. And tonight, he might have gotten himself a roster spot. Other receivers of note tonight, as mentioned prior, Darius Slayton, the rookie, made his debut and caught that gorgeous pass from Daniel Jones. But I gotta say, beyond that, the kid has great routes. One that really stood out to me, he had a stop and go on the first drive of the second half, and if you could find that, I would definitely take a peek. If that pass was on target, this kid was gone. He completely froze the cornerback. It looked great. You definitely saw playmaking ability from this kid if you watched his routes, and all that talk that coaches and players were saying about him having that natural talent definitely showed tonight. I spoke about that in my news video earlier this morning, so you could definitely check that out as well. But Darius Slayton, lone catch from Daniel Jones, but definitely looked good out there on offense. And just a quick side note, just popped into my head. Scott Simonson, goodbye. Got cut because of paperwork issue or whatever they wanted to call it. Immediately drops a pass. Tonight, gets into the ball game, drops another pass. Have a great day. Thank you for your years of service, Simonson. Goodbye. Garrett Dixon showed he can catch, he can run, he can break tackles. He's our third tight end, maybe the rookie CJ. Thanks for the years of service, Simonson. It's been real. The Giants had no passing touchdowns in tonight's game, but we did have 2 rushing touchdowns. And that's a great segue for me to get into talking about the running backs. In my top 5 things to watch video, number 2 was who's going to earn that spot behind Saquon Barkley as the number 2 running back. Unlike the quarterback situation where no one really assumed control over that third slot, I believe tonight it was decided. Wayne Gallman started the game and he looked very good. He utilized the holes that the offensive line opened up. 31 yards on 8 carries. I mean, not monster numbers, but it does look like Wayne Gallman is going to be that number 2 once again behind Saquon Barkley. The 2 men that scored were, first of all, Rod Smith, who was actually sent out of the game with a groin injury, and I'll make sure to keep you all up to date on whatever comes out about that. And then second, rookie John Hillman scoring once again. Outside of those 2 short yardage scores, no other running back really impressed much. One thing I will say, though, in regards to Paul Perkins, in that previous video, I mentioned that just due to the fact that he's had prior injuries, the fact that he's from the old regime, he was drafted by the prior general manager of the New York Giants, he might be the odd man out in this running back group. But I gotta say, he looked good catching the football tonight. He had 3 receptions, was able to run with the ball after making the catch. Is it enough for him to secure a spot on the roster? Not entirely sure, but we'll just have to wait and see what the future holds, I guess. And that's all I really got for you guys. Giants win tonight against the Bengals in preseason week 3. I hope you enjoyed my review. If you did, please leave a like on the video. Consider subscribing to the channel. I do work really hard on these videos, trying to get you guys as much content as possible. As I did mention, I did upload today the 3rd episode of Madden 20 Giants franchise, so definitely check that out in the description. I'll leave the full playlist as well as the annotation above. Preseason week 3 in the books, another win for the Giants, some very positive things, some negative things, but at the end of the day, we're 1 week closer to football, real football. Like I said, hope you enjoyed the video, guys. I'll see you in the next one.